in the service that I provide, the success comes right away. I find that value is what I showcase to clients. Isn't that clarity and structure, right? That evening when they get their plan in hand, they're able to sleep well, knowing. I usually tell clients it's not about having or not having. It's about knowing if you have or not have. That's more important. So at least you get that clarity. Even if you don't have, it's okay. You know what steps you need to do to get there, right? And if that's the value that I'm telling to my clients, they get that success right away. I feel that is the case.
Yeah.
Numbers, achieving goals is just a process. You follow the structure, and nobody's plan stays the same. Things change so much these days. You need to keep adapting the plan for sure. But that's a process, right? And if you follow the process and realign, you will achieve your goals eventually, for sure. But immediately what you get is what the value. And I feel that success is what I've always tried to give clients.
Welcome back to Let's Get Rich with Pattu, part 2 of this fascinating chat we're having with Vikram Krishnamurthy from Insightful.in and Pattu, of course. We ended the last episode, Vikram, on all about how pricing works, right? So we've overcome that hurdle. If you had to lay out this entire process for us, what is the process you undertake? How much time do you spend with each client? What do you offer them for that flat fee? Can you just lay that all out for us, please?
Sure. So when a client is, first of all, interested in reaching out to me and they reach out to me, we first have this introductory meeting where I make sure I connect online for a 10-15 minute chat, where I share my screen and show them exactly what they're getting into, what they don't get, so that we are on the same page and there's no ambiguity. Once we do that, that's when the client decides if they would like to even use my services or not. Half the time, they're not, because they were looking for something totally different, which is perfectly fine, right? But once the client is okay and they want to take this forward, then we sign on. There's a process that SEBI itself requires us to sign off on an engagement letter and pay the fees and all that. And once we have those initial formalities done, then we schedule the meetings. In my process, and this differs from person to person, we have about 3-4 meetings. Each meeting is about half an hour, 45 minutes, and we connect online where I share my screen. I believe in helping the client build the plan along with me rather than me just building a plan and giving it to them. And that's why I go through that process. Some people may not do that, which is perfectly fine. Their approach could be different. But yeah, at the end of those 3 meetings, they have the complete plan in hand and the education that they would need, at least the basics of what they need to look for. And then they're ready to implement the plan. I, in my approach or service, provide a 6 months of support. So in case they have questions or changes or updates or anything like that, they can reach out to me and I'm there to support them. But that 6 months is included in that. After that, if they wish to continue with doing annual reviews and all that, they continue the engagement after the 6 months period. And this is all mentioned on the website. And also each advisor has their own process. But the process that we go through is first, and if you want to share your screen, I can just show. Yeah, I can just walk you through that.
There you go. I hope it's on screen now, Vikram.
Yes. Yeah. So in essence, what I'm helping a client do is this, right? So there are so many different aspects of personal finance, and there are even DIY investors who've been investing for many years. They tend to focus too much on just the one piece of investments, or at most maybe taxation, right? But they lose the focus on how it's all coming together, right? Where is it fully optimized towards what I really want in life? And secondly, are my goals even identified clearly, right? So I sit down, first to help them understand what their goals are. And then once we have a clarity on that, is how we put all these pieces in an efficient, cost-effective manner towards their goal. So this is the idea behind what I'm here to help them do. But we don't jump into all these pieces at once also. And if you could just show me the other screen. So the process that I go through is this, right? See, I show this to every client. In every meeting, I start by showing this. In my approach, I first start with understanding their cash flows, because cash flows, understanding that and having a control over them, or even realizing what is going on, is the most important thing. If you don't have this, you can have the best investments, but you'll go pull it out for reasons that you'd never thought about. So having a clear
what all goes into this? What is this cash flow exercise about?
So it's about clearly understanding, okay, what are the income sources today? What are the expenses? And expenses don't mean just your monthly expenses. What about these irregular things? For example, going on a vacation every year, or buying even a car every 4-5 years once, right? All that averages out to be something on a monthly basis, right? So when you bring in all these irregular things also into the cash flow, that's when you truly understand what is your actual monthly expense, not just your, what you spend every month alone.
Does any historical data help, Vikram? For example, if you want my wife and I's last 3 years, our spending patterns, does that help at all?
It definitely helps, but not many people even capture that, right? So we have to go with assumptions, and it's also not backward looking necessarily. For example, vacations, it could also be like, what would I like to do going forward? right? So although backward data would help give them some indication of what they're doing, it's important for them to think, okay, what do I like it to be, or what is it likely to be going forward, right? So that's where the cash flows come in. So when we bring in all these irregular things and all that, and then understand what is the actual surplus that they have, it's not what they think they have sometimes. And then that forms the base for the next steps, right? The next step is for us to then lay out, okay, what the goals are. Then we calculate, okay, if you need this goal 20 years from now or 15 years from now, what is it that you need to do? You can either save monthly from the surplus that you have, or if you already have some lump sum, we can just set it aside for that goal and take care of that goal, or a combination of the two. But then if you have too many goals and you don't have enough, then that's where priorities have to be made, right? So I give the choice to the client then, okay, these are the numbers, this is what it is. You tell me what is more important for you. There's no magic we can do. We only have numbers. Math is 1 + 1 is 2. So then they may take their time to prioritize. And then once we have these bottom two pieces clearly laid out, is when we get to the investment part. The unfortunate thing is most people do this whole thing upside down. They start investing money and focusing on returns and products, and then don't even realize what are they even trying to do all this for in the first place. So that is where investment. So once we have clarity on the goals and the cash flows, investment decisions become much more easier actually, because you know exactly what timeline you're investing each goal for, and then we can choose based on their risk profiling. We choose, okay, this is the asset allocation you need to have for that particular goal. And once we build this pyramid, is then we can understand what is even the size of this pyramid and what about the risks that can actually topple this. And that is where insurance comes in. So insurance is literally the last thing we do, where we calculate and say, okay, to protect this, we need to replace your cash flows for 20 years. What is the insurance that you need to have, term insurance? So that's the last step. So this is the process that I go through with anyone. This doesn't matter how much money a person has. Everybody can fit into the structure, right? And at the end, when we have the plan, it covers all these aspects in this process. And that's the approach that I at least take. And different people may do it differently, but this is the approach that I take.
Sure. Yeah. So if I may push you a little bit on this pyramid, see, goal planning, I think, is very, very personal and it's down to your clients. But in cash flow, do you kind of try and interject and say, hey, look, this might help you. These are the habits you need to change. Does that chat happen?
It does, but that's where I said earlier in the last episode, if you remember, is that I make the numbers talk, right? So when I show them, okay, this is what your spending is, this is what you need, and this is the gap, you either decide, okay, am I going to cut down on this expense today to fund that goal, or you give up on the goal, right? Of course, we can't just increase the return expectation and make everything look good, right? That's never something we recommend. So it's either one of these things, and then they realize, okay, it's something that I have to decide, that the person has to decide. So in my style at least, I don't try to say, okay, this is what you have to do. Some clients, some advisors may actually be saying clearly, this is what you have to do. But I will give them suggestions, but at the end of the day, it's completely up to them to then prioritize. And then they don't complain also. If you give up on this, then they know the cost and benefit of each decision.
What are the tools you use, Vikram? Can you throw some light on that? We tried with some calculators that Pattu has, which are on the SEBI portal, etc., etc. What are the tools you use, and how do you display everything to your clients? Is it Excel? I'm trying to get,
Sure.
the tools you use.
Yes, I use Excel. Yes. But of course, it's customized to this approach that I was talking about, right? So it's very simple, right? I just show them the cash flow summary. I show them the asset summary. And then I calculate the goals to show them the goal calculations. And then they can visually see, okay, this is the gap in this. And they actually play around with that sheet. I give them the sheet for them to play around. And then they come to a decision. So it's simple Excel tools, nothing too complicated. But it's how you go through the journey with them with that Excel is where it's not about the tool. It's about how you use the tool that matters, right? So when you take them through the journey, they know how to use the tool optimally. That's the more important thing. Yeah.
Okay, on to my most favorite segment of earners, right, which are freelancers. How does this pyramid change for freelancers, and what are the percentage of your clients who are freelancers? I think this is very interesting for me.
So it doesn't change too much. See, the income, cash flow, the income part is what differs. For a salaried person, it's a little more structured. For a freelancer, it's a little more varied. For business people, it's sometimes once in a year they get some income sometimes.
Crazy, yeah.
So the variability of the duration of income is what changes. It's not the actual. So we still work with averages over here, right? But where the challenge comes is they may not be able to commit to a monthly SIP as
exactly.
a normal as a normal salaried person would. But there again, we try to work out. Okay, you have to do debt investments and equity investments. if you have only little, let's do the equity investments every month, and maybe we can tie the ad hoc monthly or annual bonuses or something like that to the debt investment, so that we're not timing badly the market. So that kind of planning also comes into the play when it comes to a person who has a large varied income. So yeah, those kinds of small variations are going to be there. I would say for me, about 20-25% of my clients would be freelancers. Most of them are salaried, but some freelancers too. But the structure and the process is almost the same. I don't see a huge difference.
Got it. Quick question, Pattu, from last episode. Remember, 2 episodes prior, we had got to that 80,000-90,000 a month you have to invest to reach that goal after we did all the calculators. Because I think like a freelancer, if you multiply it by 12 and put it in once a year or twice a year, that's fine, right? Even for the freelancers?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Giving all the experience you have, Vikram, over all these years, what is it that you bring to the table in terms of true value? How do you convince somebody, particularly a DIY investor, that they need this value? Forget why they need this value. What is the value that you bring to the table?
So I briefly touched on this earlier. See, the real value is in giving them clarity and a proper structure and that validation. This is specifically for DIY investors I'm talking about, right? For a person who's completely new, the value is that I'm there to guide them right from scratch because they have no idea what even a mutual fund is sometimes, which is fine. That's a whole different value. But for DIY investors, it's more of the giving that clarity, structure, and a third person point of view and non-emotional, unbiased point of view. That's the real value. I would say it's to also help them understand, because emotions come into play for sure, but too much of emotion is bad, too much of logic is also bad. How do you balance those two, right? It's great knowing how to crunch numbers, but you should also know when to stop, right? Sometimes we go overboard. Because I can analyze things, I analyze things. But okay, for example, think of a young earner having 10 lakhs in his retirement or whichever bucket he has it for, spending 10 hours, 15 hours analyzing every mutual fund out there, like this return, that return, and all these ratios to get an extra 1% return. Now, that 1% is just 10,000 rupees on his 10 lakhs, right? What value is it really adding to his overall? He gets into that game. It becomes more like a game that I'm finding the best thing possible. But if it doesn't really add value, you need somebody to tell you that, okay, stop here. This is not meaningful anymore, right? You need to stop. That's another value that I add here. I think that's the main thing. And yeah, these are the basic values that you need sometimes a third person to come in and tell you these things, and that's where the value is. Yeah.
If I may,
sure, Pattu.
There is also one more aspect of this value. If you carefully listen and re-listen to what Vikram has been saying about his process, nowhere is the client going to be dependent on the advisor, right? He ensures that the client is not going to be dependent on him. One, it's a service and he offers 6 months support. There is no obligation directly, indirectly, implicitly, explicitly to renew. Right? He talks about educating the client, and I'm sure there are many DIY guys who come in for the first year's service. Vikram says everything is fine, and they never talk to Vikram again. I mean, that has happened all the time. So that is the value. You are going to a professional who wants you to be independent and not dependent on him. And that is just amazing. I mean, that is true for, we generally talk about that a lot in Fee-Only India. And we tend to make it a point that all advisors in part of Fee-Only India do that. They don't create this dependence for the client. So that is a great aspect of value, I would say.
I think that's amazing. And Vikram, on that point, what are the percentage of people who do not come to you in the second year? And I'm sure you feel a lot of success, but then on a business side, is it great for business, right? So that's where the duality comes in.
Yeah. So to be honest with you, just numbers side, about 50 to 60% of my clients do not continue with my engagement after the initial 6 months period itself, which is perfectly fine. And they tell me even when they sign up that what they were looking for is that one-time structuring and validation, right? And I actually feel good that, he's able to manage it on their own. That's number one. Number two, business, today, luckily, it's been good for me. I mean, I have no complaints. In fact, for a few months of the year, I may have to even shut down my website, so I'm not able to take on more clients, right? So I'm not in that to just to have business, having a client signed up with me or anything like that. So I don't find that as a need. And if the client needs me, I'm always there to help them, support them. But it's not. I don't want to have that dependency on me, and that's what I think. Yeah.
That's amazing. And dialing back a little bit in the entire process we are talking about, right? They know how much they need to pay you. You've kind of got a match in terms of styles and wavelength and all of that. So my main question, Vikram, is there any obstacle for a client to start, where does that trust come from to share all this personal information? Because that's a lot to share. Deepest, darkest secrets. Every single rupee that's in my bank account, what my wife's earning, what I'm earning, whether my situation's really bad or really good, etc. Right? How does one overcome that?
Yeah. Strangely, I've never ever faced this problem.
That's
I don't
amazing.
know. Yeah. See, because when the person even comes to and wants to reach out to you, I'm not going and selling myself anywhere. I'm not going and advertising for people to come and sign on with me. And they have some background of what I do. They've been validated. Pattu's on his list and so many things, right? So they're already pre-qualified and pre-validating me. And they know there is a certain level of certain trust, first of all. Secondly, you would never go to a doctor or an auditor and say, I will not give you information. You would want to give them as much as information so that they can give them the best advice, right? So if the intention is coming from there, it's not me pushing them to do anything. They are all open to giving me all the information. Of course, I'm not taking the bank account numbers, but whatever information is relevant to the planning, they're almost always free. That's never a roadblock. Yeah.
So if I may, Vikram has got excellent SEO skills as well. So
Okay.
there are many clients who come straight from organic search, as we call it. So I think the magic happens in that 15-20 minutes introductory call. It is there that you form an opinion. That if that first impression is good, then the journey will typically be smooth. If there are no problems there, it's going to be an issue for both parties.
Absolutely.
Fascinating. And I guess a little bit more of a philosophical question, Vikram. Now that you've had so much experience and years of doing this, any advice you have for somebody who's at that stage in life when they've just started earning? And what advice would you give to somebody who's well into the journey but is suddenly realize that, look, they're way off that target? There are a lot of people in their mid-30s, perhaps early 40s, who have young children, have been battling day to day, this typical middle class situation in India, right? And then suddenly the realization hits you that I only have so many years of earning left. I need to achieve this corpus for my retirement, for my kids' education, etc., etc. So two different kinds of people. What advice would you give this young earner starting off and this person who is feeling a lot of tension right now?
Sure. Yeah, so firstly, for young people starting off, it's very important to understand the basics, right? You don't need to get complicated. People want to become experts overnight. They want to start doing trading and options trading and all that. Just because they can learn it doesn't mean they have to learn it and do it, right? So as a beginner, the most important thing is go back to the basics. Understand, people don't even understand what the impact of inflation is. Sometimes they want to go do trading, right? So apply the basics, number one, right? Number two is get into good financial habits early on. Like even just tracking your expenses is the basic thing anybody should do. Because if you don't have control, as I showed you, right, if you don't have knowledge or control over your expenses, you're never going to it's always going to keep pulling you back. So these kinds of basic things is what you need to focus on. And the third thing is, try to avoid making mistakes rather than making great moves. I always say this in my clients also. Experts will make great moves. If you are able to not or minimize the number of errors you do earlier on, that is the biggest success you can have as a young earner, right? And you should know what to do, what not to do. Today, with so much of information out there, it's actually not about how much information you have. What not to take into your ears is what is more important than what to actually implement. So you need to get to that mindset where you know what is noise, what is not, and what you need to do as a basic. That's what I would say for beginners. For advanced people, as you grow and you have more money coming in, I usually always like to tell this to clients. See, what defines a person's financial success in life is their patience when they have nothing and their attitude when they have everything, right? So patience when you don't have, following the process, having a clear plan, just sticking to it, not worrying about the day to day is very, very important. And there will be, we always say this, right? There are years when nothing happens and there are days when years happen, right? So that time will come, but you need to follow the process. You need to gradually get there and build up that to make that impact to your finances. And attitude when you have everything. So, for example, let's say you're earning a lot in your mid 30s and 40s, right? That's when people go overboard, right? That's when you want to buy the best cars, you want to go the best vacations, which is fine, but you should understand the impact of it and not blindly go, right? And that attitude is very, very important, knowing that this is not permanent. This is, it's only temporary. And if you have that balance between that, that's when you can, have a much more financially secure life, is what I would always say. Yeah.
Fascinating. What a line. Pattu, and you, I don't know what it is about your community that comes up with these pearls. Patience when you have nothing, and attitude when you have a lot or everything.
That's fantastic.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
That defines a person's financial life, to be, in my opinion. Yeah, I think.
I can imagine. Vikram, how many of your clients come to you for this, this new concept of FIRE? I want to retire early.
Yeah.
Forget when I'm 55 and 60. And how do you react to them?
Yeah, so this is a concept that's been, people use so many different words for it, but the concept is they understand that don't want to depend on their jobs anymore. That's the underlying thing. It doesn't matter if you're a freelancer or a salaried person, because those days it was already a job that was secured lifelong and you retire at 58 and you have a pension coming in. Today, that's not there, especially in IT and all that, right? So this is really, that in the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen everybody talk about just this FIRE and financial freedom. But where people sometimes get confused is, of course, you need passive income, right? That's what we call as for this to create this income. Everybody comes and says, no, I want to create a second source of income. I want a second passive income. Great. If you have 10 lakhs today, you can create passive income just by putting it to an FD, right? That interest is passive income. But where it's meaningful is that enough to replace your expenses every month? That is when it's meaningful passive income, right? And that understanding sometimes is lost. They just want second income. So that takes time, right? And then you need to calculate to understand what is the corpus that I need to build. And then from then on, the passive income is enough for all my expenses. That is very, very important. And that is where when you have a clear plan with all your other goals also brought into the picture, you'd really understand when can I achieve this financial freedom. So that's very important. It's not just running behind a passive income. It's about, having a meaningful passive income is very important. Yeah.
Amazing. So 2 questions, right? One is, Pattu in a previous episode about rebalancing and de-risking had mentioned about how it's so important that you have your de-risking plan ready today so that, you can plan. Is all this rebalancing and de-risking part of what you offer your client today from that, from the first interaction? And do you follow this 5% rebalancing that Pattu proposed?
Yeah. So when we make the plan, obviously we can't know what the values are going to be 10 years from now, 5 years from now. But I would make sure the client understands that, you need to maintain this ratio for your goal. If you're deviating from that, you need to, of course, come back to that. And, or if you're getting closer to a goal, see, today a goal is 10 years away, but a goal becomes a 3-year goal or 2-year goal when you get closer to that. So you need to start reducing the equity exposure, right? So this is the basic concept that everyone is educated. But doing it, either the client has to do it on their own, or if they're having this ongoing engagement with any financial planner, they would help them do it. That's why we do a yearly review, just to make sure of, if things are on track, do we have to rebalance and all that. The 5% rule, yes, I try to, beyond 5% is where I'm also a little more uncomfortable to, I would rather do that. But we don't do that every month, every quarterly and all that. Of course, once in a year, you look at it, it's generally enough, or once in 6 months at most, unless there's a massive difference in the market or anything like that.
Before we move on to the final part, which is aspiring RIAs such as yourself, right? And how do they enter this career, etc., etc. In your career, in your daily practice, what is it that brings you the most pressure? And then what is it that brings you the most joy?
See, luckily, I'm in a profession that I love doing. So I don't find what I do as work, luckily. So I enjoy doing it. And I only take on clients who have the right mindset. When there is a mismatch, sometimes clients expect something different and all. That is where you get a little bit, and that your mindset itself is affected, right? So that's where I get the treasure, not from the actual work at all, in my opinion, because I personally enjoy doing what I do.
Dealing with painful clients. Now, I kind of get it, yeah.
Painful, more in the sense of if there is a mismatch in what they were expecting, and if you tried your best to communicate, but still didn't get through, that's where the challenges come. But That's the only time I feel, it is. Otherwise, and luckily you will also have control over your time, right? I can know exactly this month I'm not able to take on more clients. I don't take on clients. So it's not the work pressure that comes to me at all, luckily. Yeah.
And perhaps this is a premature question to ask because if you started in 2014, it's been 10 years. But how many have you seen success stories is what I'm trying to angle at. And what do these success stories look like? Has anyone achieved FIRE under your guidance? Has anyone, I guess that's my question. What does success look like after 10 years for you, for some of your clients?
Sure. See, for me, in the service that I provide, the success comes right away. I find that value is what I showcase to clients isn't that clarity and structure, right? That evening when they get their plan in hand, they're able to sleep well, knowing. I usually tell clients it's not about having or not having. It's about knowing if you have or not have. That's more important. So at least you get that clarity. Even if you don't have, it's okay. You know what steps you need to do to get there, right? And if that's the value that I'm telling to my clients, they get that success right away. I feel that is the case.
Yeah.
Numbers, achieving goals is just a process. You follow the structure, and nobody's plan stays the same. Things change so much these days. You need to keep adapting the plan for sure. But that's a process, right? And if you follow the process and realign, you will achieve your goals eventually, for sure. But immediately what you get is what the value. And I feel that success is what I've always tried to give clients.
What a great answer. And finally, for those aspiring to be fee-only RIs such as yourself, we really need to grow this number of 23. I personally believe. Actually, I have two questions, but I just remember the second one. But coming to people aspiring to be like yourself, it's not easy, right? How do you convince them, firstly, that this is a viable business for life, a viable career? What are the processes that they should follow? And, first of all, where do they get their 5 years of experience, et cetera, et cetera? And what would you say to this entire community, who I hope grows from 23 to 230 and, into the thousands?
Yeah. Yeah, I truly want that to happen. I absolutely want. And the market is so big. I mean, people, we
can imagine,
barely,
yeah.
I can't even call it a scratching the surface. It's nothing in India. So there's absolutely a massive scope. First, just to educate client what financial planning is, and then get them to even have the support of a financial planner. So it's a huge, you can have lakhs of people in this, and there's enough room for that. That's number one. Number two, how do people get into this? See, of course, you need to have some amount of passion if you want to do this. If it's money is the only focus, unfortunately, it's not an easy route, is my point. Eventually, yeah, you can absolutely be really, really financially successful here, but it may be a longer route to get to there. If you're really inclined towards this and you want to do this, yeah, you need to take the right steps. Unfortunately, SEBI has made it a little more difficult these days. So firstly, you need to pass an exam, which is not too bad. I mean, anybody can, sit and spend time and do that. That 5 years experience, as you mentioned, is where the real challenge is. That either you work, even though it may not be under a fee-only planner, any kind of advisory role in banks and things like that qualify for an advisory role. So your end goal could be to become a fee-only planner, but to get to that, you may not be able to start off as a fee-only planner, unfortunately.
Can somebody work with you to get that 5 years of experience?
Yeah, it's possible. But again, the problem is SEBI also comes in here, because as a registered advisor, as an individual, for example, right, I cannot have employees giving advice or working with clients, dealing with clients itself, if they don't have at least 2 years of experience at least, and they have to actually have passed exams and things like that. And there's so much of compliance requirements, data privacy, and so many things. Today, I work from home. I used to have an office. I've shut that down. So 100% of my clients are online. Now, I have another person working from somewhere else dealing with data, and all this becomes a challenge, right? And data privacy is so huge for us as we're dealing with financial information.
Imagine,
having another employee full-time, and also clients are coming to me to talk to me. I always intentionally kept it that way right from day one. I never had people talking to employees or anything like that. So if that's the real value, if it's me who is the service for them, I can't replace that easily, is the challenge that I have, right? So, yeah, that's the challenge for new entrants, but I hope SEBI also relaxes some of these things and makes it a little more easier for people to become RIAs.
And here's a little, forgive me if I sound absolutely crazy, right? For me, I imagine a world where a rickshaw driver, somebody running a canteen, somebody, all Indians of all strata of society can achieve some kind of financial help or advice, right? And some of them perhaps can use tools, free tools online, and if you're intelligent enough, you find out that process. But do you imagine a world where we have thousands of fee-only advisors who can go out and help these people? Because for me, for some reason, I feel very passionate about that strata of society which are so clued out about this world of, forget financial planning, even investments, that it's possible to invest money that grows. Oh, I only thought I had to work every single day and save and put it in one pillowcase somewhere, etc., right? How does one make these two worlds meet? We are here on YouTube, we have pretty decent incomes, and we lack advice, which is where you and Pattu come in. What about those people, and how do we make these worlds collide?
Yeah, and I think this is where tech comes in, right? I think making even financial advisory, reachable to people at that level. With today, everybody having smartphones and things like that. First, creating awareness, obviously, through of course, blogs like Pattu's and things like that. But that's only scratching the surface, right? There are people who don't even know blogs even exist. So I think it's a long way to go. But I think tech, even in the fee-only model, right, we've had discussions about how we can offer services to much lower income services through tech, right? So they may not have 3 meetings with a financial planner to have the service, but they may be able to have just 1 meeting or even completely an online process, which is perfectly fine as long as it's unbiased. And if they find value in going through that process, it's perfectly fine. But yeah, I think as the market broadens, you'll have the varied types of services, the same unbiased service offered to different classes. Because we're just in the nascent stages, I think we're targeting the easiest hanging buckets. But when more people come into the field, you will see people offering these services to much wider.
You give me a lot of hope with that answer, Vikram. Thank you again so much for your time. Pattu, thank you for bringing us to this stage. We cannot thank you enough. I'd like to add, before some last thoughts from the two of you, that I feel I've always, up until this point in my life, thought as teachers and doctors as the most noble professions, because they provide change and positive movement to people's lives, which you remember for life, right? Whether it's education/knowledge, whether it's health and being able to live this life in a healthy way. I think you are perhaps that third person, Vikram, who gives lifelong, you are providing lifelong advice and something positive that you take with you for life. And it's a profession that I find, the more I think about it, a very, very noble profession, especially since there's no conflict of interest, you're not pushing anything, and it's pure advice. And thank you for what you're doing. May your tribe increase.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us on this show.
No, thanks for your kind words. And it was a pleasure. Both of you and Pattu, always a pleasure associating with you.
Likewise,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Thank you so much. Please keep your comments coming in. Your questions for Vikram. Vikram, I'm sure you'll be generous enough if you post these 2 episodes. If our listeners and viewers have a ton of questions, we can send them your way, and perhaps there's a way we can perhaps have you back in the future. Or more from your community. Please share the word. Pattu and I would like to speak to much more of the 23 of you all so that we grow that number. Like, share, and subscribe this video, please. It's very important so that more and more people get this very valuable advice from Pattu and Vikram. Until we see you again on the next episode of Let's Get Rich with Pattu, have a great week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.